Yakuza Kiwami 2 is a modern-day remake of 2006's Yakuza 2, running on the latest iteration of the Dragon engine, first seen in 2018's Yakuza 6. Kiwami 2 is in the interesting position of not only remaking what many consider the pinnacle of the series, but also striving to re-implement a good chunk of content that was lost from earlier titles when the Dragon engine debuted. Effectively, the game sets out to juggle nostalgia and strengthen a foundation for the series to build from in the future. When I reviewed Yakuza 6 upon its release, I enjoyed its new, strong presentation, but wasn't as enamored with it as recent entries due to quantifiable steps back that were taken in terms of content and combat feel. I'm happy to report that Kiwami 2 works to fix these issues, and while it doesn't go quite as far as I'd have hoped, it is still a marked improvement and has me excited to see how the development team builds from this point moving forward. Like other Yakuza games, you'll take control of Kazuma Kiryu as you navigate through well-crafted cityscapes, defending yourself from an array of lowlifes, thugs, and other Yakuza who have it out for you. This go-round, the combat has been fine-tuned to flow better, with attacks feeling subtly more satisfying to land, with improved enemy AI that is just more fun to contend with. Even when continuing my series tradition of doing my first playthrough on hard difficulty, the challenge remains steady throughout. There are a few annoying enemy archetypes from the original release that return here in all of their irritating glory, but they mainly tend to pop up during story-focused events and amount to just a minor bother to dispatch. Similarly to how Yakuza 2 introduced an array of weapons to the series, Kiwami 2 introduces a nice assortment of weapons that 6 was lacking. This helps give some much needed choice and freedom in terms of how you approach brawls that work toward making things feel right again. I still find myself missing the old combat engine from Yakuza 0 now and then, but Kiwami 2 does a solid job of strengthening 6's case to move away from it. Another thing this game fine-tunes from 6 is general engine performance. The game still aims for 30 frames per second on a base PlayStation 4, but it stays much more consistent this time. You'll still notice some drops here and there, sometimes bafflingly in small, confined rooms, but the performance stands strong more often than not. Screen tear is far less noticeable now as well. I also feel a need to highlight the lighting engine. Much like 6, the game looks great in the daytime and additionally stunning at night. The flair and style exhibited in specific combat scenarios can be exhilarating as well, confidently showing just how far this series has come since the original release of Yakuza 2. In terms of the numerous side content that Kiwami 2 reintroduces, it's hard to cover it all without essentially reading down a list. As per usual, most mini-games aren't noteworthy when taken on their own, but it's more about the sum of the parts when it comes to Yakuza. Golfing, poker, blackjack, coliseum fights, claw games, and more all return, but the real fun comes from breaking off from the main quest at any point you choose to chase after these ventures. The game is still missing some of my favorites from years past, such as bowling and billiards, but entry by entry we're getting back to the content volume one could expect from a Yakuza title that helps contribute to its immense charm. I'd also be remiss to not mention that arcade classic Virtual On is fully playable in the usual Club SEGA locations, which I am very thankful for. We in the West also finally get to have a taste of SEGA's eccentric toilet venture, and yes, that is toilet with a toy pun. There's no beating around the bush on this one, folks. It's about aiming during the urinary process to achieve success in a couple minigames. The Yakuza series is nothing without its strong sense of tonal duality, and while bizarre, it's yet another strangely endearing side activity to add to the list. To that end, Kiwami 2 brings back 2 side activities with new minor storylines from recent entries. Yakuza 6's clan fighter system returns with a twist. This new take on it now sees you entering a combat scenario with a fixed number of fighters to defend a point, as opposed to spamming lots of unit types to invade a point like in 6. I'm mixed on the changes made. While it demands a bit more thought and care now, I found the unit AI to make baffling decisions of their own accord. Oftentimes I'll see my characters running away from enemies who are attacking the points they are meant to be defending just to return to a fixed position. I found myself yearning for a better way to select and move units around the map. In its current incarnation, it feels a bit unwieldy and confusing. I can't say I was particularly grabbed by the implementation in 6, but I feel like I preferred it it to the changes Kiwami 2 has made. My feelings on the actual gameplay aside, the context is charming at the least, with Kiryu operating as the manager of Majima's construction company, where every encounter ends with an ode to Majima's glory. What a guy. The other gameplay style Kiwami 2 resurfaces is Yakuza 0's Cabaret Club management, which has a new storyline that actually picks up from Yakuza 0's Cabaret plot, which I appreciated quite a bit. This side story sees Kiryu managing a failing cabaret club as it attempts to outperform rival operations to become #1 in Japan against a cartoonishly evil rival association. Unlike the clan fighter system, however, the gameplay systems here are largely unchanged. Hostesses now have personality traits, and other chaos elements come into play throughout the competitions to help keep you on your feet, but frankly there wasn't much broken here to fix in the first place. During the May Cabaret bouts, you can now see the exact amount of money your rival is making during a competition, making these big events feel even more tense. In Zero, the indication on who was winning was very unclear, so this is an obvious but very welcome change. Frankly put, the Cabaret management still stands strong as one of my favorite side activities in the entire series, and I've had lots of fun getting into it all over again. While on the subject of Yakuza 0, there is an entirely new side story focused on Majima that is unlocked while playing through Kiwami 2's main story. It picks up from his role in 0 and serves to tie up some dangling loose ends, and I'm conflicted on these chapters because I feel that game wrapped a nice bow on its narrative and frankly didn't leave me wanting more. Majima's chapters here essentially amount to a couple of hours of what feel like filler, and while it's cool to be able to mess around with his fighting style in this new engine, it's pretty limited here. The story here is half typical Yakuza fare and half retreading some beats of his story from Yakuza 0. I adore this series, so I'm happy to have the little extra content where I can get it, but between the undercooked combat scenarios and head-scratchingly similar narrative beats, I couldn't help but walk away from these chapters wishing they'd had more care put into them. To that end, the last remaining element to touch on here is the main game story. While the plot is nearly identical to the original release, I don't want to say much in consideration of those who recently entered the franchise. What I will say is that Yakuza 2 has long been a fan favorite in terms of its narrative, and this remake stays true to many great scenes, down to having practically identical choreography. There were some unfortunate losses in the process, such as a small endgame area that was cut entirely, with its story content moved elsewhere here, but there are still many heart-pumping and emotional twists and turns like I've come to expect from entries in the series. Yakuza Kiwami 2 stands as a strong reminder that even in its earliest days, the Yakuza games were pulling off drama better than most others can hope to. As of the time of this writing, I've put 36 hours into this title, and I'm looking forward to many more as I move on to exhaust the in-game completion list. It's a marked improvement over Yakuza 6, and I had a great time with it. I urge anyone watching this to give it a shot. There's never been a better time to get into one of SEGA's best properties. Thanks for watching, and if you want to see reviews of other Yakuza games, be sure to check out my channel for more reviews like this one. A big thank you goes out to all my patrons, and a special thanks, as always, to Adrian, Buckles Chucklo, Goldstorm07, Harry, Jeet, Joey, Lewis Jones, Patrick Thompson, Svendelica, That Trav Guy, The Crazy Even, The Legend of Groose, and Wolf Chaosan. It'd be much harder to do this without your support, so thank you.